Sometimes we want our programs to be interactive. And one way to make them interactive is by getting user input. This is the input command, and we can give it a prompt. And so, what's going to happen is the Python program is going to pause execution and it's not going to resume until the user provides a value here. Once it gets that value, then it will return that value that the user gave from this input function, which in this case, we can assign it to a variable. And so we've just arbitrarily named this variable name, but we could have named the variable x, or we could have named it foo. It doesn't really matter what we name this variable. However, it is a best practice to give a variable a descriptive name so it makes your program easier to follow. And so once we have the name, what we can do is use our old friend, the print statement, and we can then say, hi there. And then here, what I'm doing is concatenating the name to the string. That is, the value stored in the name variable will be appended to the end of this string here. So let me run this program and you can see what I mean. So, what is your name? I will say Sean. And then when I press enter, we can see that Sean gets stored to name, and then we print hi there, Sean, which was stored to that name. And we can see that that value here was concatenated to the string there. Now, you can reference this name variable as many times as you want. So when I run this program and I say Sally, it'll say, hi there, Sally. Sally is quite a nice name. I can also concatenate many strings together to create one large string. So for example, I could say hi, and then I'll concatenate name, and then I'll concatenate the string literal, let me make sure your name is, and then I'll concatenate again the same name variable, and then I'll concatenate finally a question mark. And then when I run this and we say, what is your name? And I say, Sue, it'll say, hi, Sue. Let me make sure your name is Sue. And you can see that all 5 of these strings are combined to make one string. So what if we want to get multiple inputs? Well, we can do that as well. I can say, okay, well, what is your email? What is your nickname? And then finally, I can print all that out and say, hey, let's make sure we've got this right. Your name, and then we will concatenate the name, your email, and then we'll concatenate the email and your nickname. And finally, we will concatenate the nickname. Think about what this program is going to do. When I execute this program, this input statement is going to pause the execution until I've answered this prompt. Once I've answered the prompt, it will store whatever I give it in the name variable. Then the Python program will pause execution here and ask me, what is your email? And then I will give it some email address for which it will store it in the email variable. And then, as you can probably guess, the Python program will halt execution here and it will ask me, what is your nickname? And it will wait until I provide a value. And then once I press enter, it will store whatever I give it in this nickname variable. And then at that point, the program can resume execution. Let me show you what I mean. I will say Joseph. And then what is your email? I'll say joseph@example.com. And then what is your nickname? And I will just say Joe. And then it says, let's make sure we've got this right. And you can see here that the 3 different variables were used. So another thing we can do here is reuse the same variable for multiple purposes. So for example, I can say, what is your address, and get the address, and I'll say, so you live at address, and then I'll concatenate the address. But then I can reuse this address and reassign a new value to this address variable. I can say, okay, well, please type a new address. And then I can say, your address is now, and then I will concatenate the address. So when the program says, what is your address? I'll say One Old Way, and then it'll say, so you live at address One Old Way. And then it's going to ask again, please type in a new address. Now, I'll give it a value here, 9 New Drive. When I give it this value, it's going to override what exists in this value now. Right now, the address variable contains the value One Old Way. When I press enter, that value will be overridden, and address will now contain the value 9 New Drive. So let me enter there, and you can see your address is now 9 New Drive. Now, notice once I've reassigned that address variable, there's no way to get that old value back. If I were to comment out this line of code, you can see my editor is showing a yellow highlight around this address. And if I look here, it says redeclared address defined above without usage. And what this is saying is this line of code right here is basically pointless. I'm assigning this value address, but I'm not doing anything with it. So what's the point of it at all? That warning won't go away unless I get rid of or comment out that line of code. And you can see that the warning here goes away.